Knew where I was, but not where I stand. I left the rain for the desert sand. Went far away to find who I am. But I still hold on to you, hold on to me, hold on to something I can't see. But I still hold on to you, hold on to me, hold on to something I can't see. When you
A real clockwork soldier.
Generation Orange in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Generation Orange. My name is Edson Ochoa, and also with me is my good friend and co-host, obviously, Sean Ringrose. Sean, what's up, man? Say hi to all of our lovely fans right now.
What's up?
The sky.
The sky. Yeah. Well, that's about what's up, man. It's been a long week.
It
to
has.
say the least.
That's just putting it lightly, but we're 2 days away from the weekend, so at least that's a plus. It's been
the correction. That's 2 days for you that don't have tomorrow off. For those that have tomorrow off,
sure,
it is
rub it
officially
in.
the weekend.
Sure, rub it in my face.
Oh, I am definitely rubbing it in your face. I mean, to be fair, though, I worked a 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. shift this week, so I definitely earned this day off tomorrow.
It's something from the. It was a text message from the apartment complex. They're changing their office hours. But anyway, guys, it was a hectic week. We had Open Cup on Tuesday, and that was interesting to say the least. If I'm going to be kind of frank about it, it was a major disappointment. And as Coach Cabrera said on his post-game press conference, it was embarrassing.
The second half.
Yes.
Let's clarify. Not the entire match, just the second half.
No, just the second half. But the drastic difference between both halves, I think, caught everybody's attention negatively, and it was something that Coach Cabrera wasn't going to hide, or he wasn't going to try and sugarcoat it. And usually he rarely kind of sugarcoats things that bad, but this time, like, he was extremely frank. He was extremely and visibly mad at his players that played today, and made some comments saying this is the reason these guys are on the bench.
Yeah. I mean, he's not wrong necessarily.
Of course not. Of course not. He's completely right. But we've got Dynamo to talk about today. We got another Open Cup match next Tuesday for Dylan Wamper's birthday, the 18th, against Minnesota United. And we've also got to talk about Women's World Cup. We've got salary figures that were announced by the MLS Players Association that we would like to discuss as well. And any other topics that you guys would like to talk about, feel free to post it in the YouTube chat, and we'll be more than glad to make some time, if we can, to discuss those points or topics or any hot takes that you might have. I know Sean is always ready to rip someone a new one when they're wrong.
I am more than open to hot takes, no matter who they come from and no matter what they're about.
Let me go call the guys from Big Soccer. I'll be right back.
You didn't let me finish. There are a very few select things that hot takes about them will trigger me, to say the least, and you guys who listen or watch regularly know what they are. But beyond that, I mean, unless you have a take that, frankly, doesn't make a lot of sense, I'm probably not going to rip you a new one. I'm probably going to be very fair and open to what you have to say. But part of that is you guys have to be just as open to listening to what I have to say as well. I do a lot of research into the team, into the financial aspects, into contracts, into MLS, into the roster rules and regulations. And there's a reason I do that much research, is because honestly, I find a lot of that stuff very interesting, but also because there's a lot of uneducated fans out there, not just for this team, but across MLS in general, but specifically this team, that just, they assume things because it logically to them, it makes sense. But at the end of the day, it is not the way the rules are set up. It's not the way the rosters are configured. It's not the way MLS does things. It's not the way FIFA does things. It's not the way CONCACAF does things, whatever it may be. It just runs counterintuitive to what people expect. And I think it's really important that fans take time to get educated a little bit about what are those roster rules. There's a lot of fans out there that want us to go spend, $3 million a year on a player, a big name player. And, in theory, on paper, that sounds like a great idea, but there's a lot more than just spending money when it comes to success in MLS, when it comes to success in terms of attendance in the stands. And that list goes on and on and on. And I cringe every time I see, especially on Facebook, and it's usually Glenn Davis's Facebook, although I see it occasionally elsewhere, but primarily there, where Glenn will post a question, and it's intended to just be a general question, but he's playing devil's advocate, and it's an open-ended question, such as, MLS player salary numbers have been released. We now know what the Dynamo are playing their players. What are your thoughts? Seems innocuous enough, but we all know that there is a large contingency of the fan base out there that believe that the Dynamo don't spend money, and believe that the only way to success is to spend money, and believe that the only reason there's no attendance is because of a lack of spending money. They see the Dynamo having, the lowest payroll in MLS right now, and they believe that means that the Dynamo have zero ambition, and that they have no desire to succeed, and are not willing to, that our ownership group is not willing to spend money to be successful. And that's unfortunate to me, because that's a perception that is created out of the media narrative from mainstream soccer media. You've got guys like, guys like Andrew Wiebe, guys like Matt Davis, guys like Grant Wall. The list goes on and on. But they all like to say that your top teams are the ones who spend the money to bring in the big transfer targets. And I look at MLS differently, I think, than them, because I am a fan of a team that approaches things differently. But I'm also a fan of teams that do it, that don't go out and buy the championship. And I feel like at times there's this in sports in general, especially in the US. Well, actually it's true in Europe too, where there's this comfort level in teams just buying a championship, whether it's for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, however long it is. It's just, we'll just go buy the best players, and that'll be good enough. Let me ask you right now, Edson, when it comes to Real Madrid, is just buying the best players the answer to Real Madrid's problems right now?
No.
Okay, so how is it that that's the answer to the Dynamo's problems? And in reality, if we look at where the Dynamo sit in the table versus where Real Madrid were at, and should it be expected to be based on what they spend, I see I just see a difference there, right? I see it from the aspect of how much money are we spending per point that we get? How much, how valuable are the dollars that we're spending? Because you can have a team that goes out and spends $20 to $30 million a year, but if they're only, if they're not maximizing those dollars, are they really doing what they're supposed to be doing in terms of a sports franchise? And the answer is no, they're not. So you look at a Toronto, you look at a Atlanta United right now, you look at a Portland Timbers, and the question has to be asked, are they getting the most out of the dollars that they're spending? And then you look at the Dynamo and you ask that same question, and somebody had gone in and actually done what is the dollar to points ratio for each team. And the Dynamo sit either first or second in the league. I think it's actually first in the league because, number one, they spend the least amount of money, but they're sitting in second, third, or fourth in the league right now. And so every point that they make, every point that they earn on the pitch is that much more valuable because they're spending less to do it. And yet they're going toe-to-toe with the big teams that spend all that money. So the real question to ask, the real perspective I think that we as fans need to have, and I say we because sometimes I get a little blinders on mode, is that it's important to spend, but it's important to spend intelligently. And what I love to see the Dynamo spend money on a true attacking midfielder to replace a Tomas Martinez, and to do it, spending $3 to $4 million a year. If that player was better, yes. In reality, though, you're not bringing in a player for $3 to $4 million a year that's a proven attacking midfielder into MLS. Not right now. It's just not going to happen. And there's not a team in this league that's going to go out and buy an attacking midfielder at that price right now. They're just not easy to they're just not, you can't, it's not like you can take your shopping list and go, okay, I need these players and I need, I need these positions, or I need this type of player. That's not how soccer works. And the other side of that coin is, if this is the team that we have and they're performing this well with what we have, then shouldn't we be truly, honestly happy that our team is as good as it is with what we have? Isn't it okay to be content with the fact that, hey, we're not going to be one of the top spending teams in the league. We're probably going to be one of the bottom few teams spending in the league, but we're going to maximize every dollar. Is that not an identity? Is that not an approach that is okay in sports? I don't understand this mentality that it's not okay to be that we can't be one of the bottom of the barrel teams in terms of spending and yet still maximize every dollar and still perform like we're a top team and spending top money.
But it's not going to matter. Hold on. It's not going to matter to these fans until we win a championship. And even then.
But we won a championship, did we not?
Yes, we did. Open Cup. But to many fans,
it's at the end of the day, what you're saying is the only thing that matters is MLS Cup performance, and nothing else matters. So here's the approach. Right. Instead of taking Open Cup seriously, let's just tank Open Cup from this point on. Instead of taking the regular season seriously, let's rest all of our starters for a third of the season and play them the other 2/3 of the season, and we'll squeak into the playoffs, and then we'll win our way to to MLS Cup. Instead of spending money to have the depth to cover for injuries and to cover for these other tournaments that our team takes part in to gain international exposure and national exposure, let's just forget all of those things. And let's go with just a single starting 11, like 90% of the teams in MLS do. You look at an SKC. How many injuries have they had? And how much are they struggling right now because they don't have the depth to cover for those injuries? The difference is the Dynamo have had 3, 4, 5 injuries this season already easily. And they're covering for it, and you can't even tell. Because guess what? The Dynamo have the depth that no other team in this league right now has, and nobody understands or recognizes it for what it is. I get that we want to win MLS Cup every year, but there's not a team out there that does. We need to realize that no team has repeated as MLS Cup champions in the last 3 seasons. Actually, technically the last 4 seasons. It is a challenge to get to MLS Cup right now. Only 2 teams make MLS Cup. There's a reason for that. There are 24 teams, 24 teams right now. And 2 teams make it to the final. That means you have to be the top 2 out of 24, which is less than 10%. You have to be the top 10% or less in order to make MLS Cup. And at the end of the day, usually the 2 teams that are the best teams in the regular season don't make MLS Cup. Usually. There are exceptions, but usually they don't make MLS Cup. MLS Cup is a championship derived on the idea of playoffs. It's derived on the idea that you struggle through a season in order to position yourself to make a run at a trophy that is all about luck and timing. MLS Cup is not about the best team. It's not about who has the best tactics. It's not about who outcoaches who. It's not about who has the best players. It's not. At the end of the day, it is 3 weeks, 4 weeks maybe, depending on how long it actually is. I think it's 3.5, 4 weeks this year. Usually 4 weeks of teams going against each other, and it's the luckiest team that makes it out alive. Because hear me out when I say this. It's the team that endures the least amount of injuries leading up to and in the playoffs. It is the team that endures the least amount of cards accumulated during the playoffs. Because once you get 2 yellow cards for any player before the semifinals, that player is banned in the semifinals or earlier and is not able to play for a match. And cards don't reset until the semifinals. It is a matter of getting lucky in terms of you need other teams to struggle at the right time. You need to be in form at the right time. We play 36 matches a year. Actually, a few more than that even, but roughly 36 matches a year. And that doesn't include playoffs. You play 36 matches a year, and at the end of the day, those matches mean very little. All that really matters is those final 6 matches that you have. No, final five matches. Maybe even only 4 matches. The final 4 matches in the playoffs that matter. That's it. And you have to be lucky. You have to get lucky at the right time. You have to have the ball fall your way. How many in that 2006 and 2007 run, how often was it really just Dynamo players either being in the right place at the right time or the ball falling to them at the right time? It wasn't so, I mean, yes, they were a good team, but they weren't the best team in the league. Not by any stretch of the imagination. They just knew how to get lucky. They knew how to have confidence. They knew how to grind it out no matter how difficult the opponent was. But it wasn't about how good they were. It wasn't about how much we paid those players or how much those players made. It was just about form at the right time, understanding and putting all the eggs in the basket of playoffs and MLS Cup run. So I struggle with it because it's all about luck at the end of the season. It's all about luck going into the playoffs, and it's all about form and timing and all of that. And some teams find a way to make it happen and some teams don't. And I find that if that's the measure of the greatness of a team, then I feel like the view of sports in general is pretty damn skewed. Because in reality, all playoffs are for any sport or any league in the U.S., it's just about luck. It's just sometimes it's about making your own luck, but it's still about luck. Look, Tom Brady's the greatest QB ever. I'll say it. I hate it, but I'll say it. He creates his own luck at times, but how many times has he gotten truly lucky? He's thrown the ball up in the air numerous times in the playoffs, and his players just happen to be the ones to come down with it. It doesn't matter that they were the best player on the field. It doesn't matter that it was the best tight end or the best wide receiver. It wasn't about tactics. It wasn't about practicing that single moment over and over and over again 30 times every week. None of that really mattered. At the end of the day, they just made it happen. And so to say that it's MLS Cup is the measuring stick, okay, that's fine if you want to go that route. But that means that you're buying into the fact that luck is the measuring stick by which sports and MLS is valued. And if that's the case, then why should I spend any money if I'm an owner? Because if you value luck over anything else, doesn't matter how much I spend. At the end of the day, it's all about the luck, and I can't buy luck. Sorry, that was my introduction rant for the night.
I don't know. It's like you said. Sometimes you gotta. It's about creating your own luck, putting yourself in that situation where you can take advantage of a play, of a card against your opponent, a penalty kick, whatever that'll get you the advantage. But at the end of the day, what gets you there is how you do in regular season. How you finish off the regular season. You can bring in your best player. You can be the best. You can bring in Lionel Messi. Lionel Messi is arguably, not in my eyes, but to many people, the best player in the world. But yet he can't win a World Cup or a Copa America with Argentina. Just because you have the best player, or just because you have a really stacked team, because that's what Argentina is. They're a stacked team.
Yep.
But if you don't have a coach that puts in discipline, if you don't have players that are willing to put their egos aside for the sake of the team, to play as a team, to have chemistry with each other, then it doesn't matter if you have the top team in the world. Because if they don't play together like they should, then it's all good. You're just spending your money, you're just spending your money like a fool.
And look, a perfect example of that, to just kind of reiterate what you're saying, is Germany, the German national team. How good are they? And it's not because they have individuals that are great. Don't get me wrong, the individuals are great. But that's not the reason they're good. The reason they're so good and so hard to beat, now this World Cup, obviously, we'll put that aside, but the reason they're so hard to beat is because they play as a team. Everybody knows their role on that team and everybody plays that role. But not only that, they trust and know that the players beside them, no matter who it is, the players in those other positions, and that harkens back to that RGV discussion we had yesterday. But no matter who is next to them, no matter who's in that position that they're partnered with, they know that player is going to meet their expectations and exceed them. They are playing for each other. They're not playing for themselves. That's the difference. That's what makes Germany so great. But it all comes down to that team mentality versus the me mentality. And you see it in a Cristiano Ronaldo with Portugal and a Lionel Messi with Argentina. It's not how great the individual is. It's how great does he make the rest of the team around him.
Let's go back to Lionel Messi. Look, why does he win almost anything with Barcelona? Because in Barcelona, ever since in the academy stages, it's all about a team mentality. Everybody plays as a team. Everybody plays for the team. That's why Barcelona tends to be very successful, because everybody plays for each other. You get Lionel Messi in Argentina, everybody's playing for their own egos, and they don't play. They don't play for each other, and that's why they suffer.
Yep.
Another thing is, it's also all about consistency. If you're gonna bring in players that are super talented, but 1 week he'll play you the best game of his life, and then 3 weeks he's going to be a ghost, then you just wasted your money. Granted, I really would. Here's the thing: like, everybody talks about Zlatan and talks about Rooney because of the hustle they've brought in, especially Rooney in his first season with DC United. Everybody talks about the hustle, the grunt that he put in, that he was able to, take MLS seriously. Were they able to make it to the MLS Cup? No, but they keep on building on that. But the thing is, if it's about the hustle, doesn't Elise have hustle as well?
Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't Mauro have hustle? Doesn't Juan David have hustle? Doesn't Kiki Struna? Hasn't he shown a lot of hustle? Maynard Figueroa, we were talking about before the stream. Don't they have a lot of hustle? Don't they show a lot of heart in this match? In this team?
Yeah, I agree. So Sergio asked a really interesting question. Do you guys, this, I'm going to ask it to you, but this is asked to me as well. Do you truly believe the Dynamo have the talent to win MLS Cup? I'll let you answer, and then I'm going to read his answer, and then I'll respond as well.
I think this season they are close, but no cigar kind of thing. Because I feel that we are missing some little pieces here and there when it comes to being able to be successful in making it to the MLS Cup. I feel that, for example, I think when it comes to the center attacking midfielder of Tomas Martinez, I feel like that's something where it's lacking. I feel like maybe distribution could be a little bit better. So that, I think that's my number one thing why I think they can make it in the playoffs, but I don't necessarily think this is a championship winning team just yet.
So I'm gonna respond, and then I'll read Sergio's own answer to the question. I do see this team being able to win MLS Cup, and we just talked about it's not about necessarily specifically how good your team is. It's about finding form at the right time. I mean, let's consider how good were the Dynamo to open the season, and if they were to go into playoffs finding that same form, there's not a team that can beat them at that point. And then not only that, but you have to have luck, and you have to sometimes create your own luck, but you have to have luck. You have to have a lack of injuries leading into the playoffs and through the playoffs, and you have to have referee decisions go your way, because at the end of the day, referee decisions do tend to decide matches in playoff matches. It just happens.
Things that we really don't have.
Yeah, I mean, well, we do and we don't, right? We have the depth this year. So if we do have a player or two go down on the starting 11, as long as it's not one of our key center backs, I think I'm fine going into the playoffs that this team can win. Because you look at the start of the season, it's the same team. We're not a different team than when we started the season, the first 5, 6, 7 matches of the season. This team hasn't changed. It's the same team. It's made up of the same players.
Do you think that the difference between Marlon Hairston and Albert Elise isn't going to be very noticeable if for some reason we either lose Elise because he gets sold?
Sure. Look, yes, but we don't know he's going to get sold at this point. My understanding is they don't actually want to sell him at this point. Kudos to them for that. They want to hold him until the winter window. And so that would leave Elise here. And as long as Elise doesn't get frustrated with that, I'm totally fine with that. Now the question is, if we were to get a really good offer for Mauro, do I think that we have a replacement for him? No, I don't. However, all teams deal with the same thing. This is not, we have to remember this is MLS. This is the way this works. We don't get the luxury of viewing it from the microcosm of just our own team. We have to understand that MLS is built this way. And it falls on Matt Jordan and Wilmer Cabrera to replace those components as soon as we lose them. If we do end up losing Elise in this summer window, which begins July 10th, it is on Matt Jordan and Wilmer Cabrera to find his replacement immediately and to find a way to have that guy gel with the team immediately. Now, is that a guarantee that it's going to work out? No, but that's what I'm saying is that we have to understand that there are going to be caveats. The team as constructed right this moment, his question was, do we believe the Dynamo right now, this team is constructed, is good enough to win MLS Cup? Does it have the talent to win MLS Cup? I already said I believe they do. They've played really well throughout the majority of their matches. They've looked really good, especially in home matches. Granted, lots of teams do, but they've even looked pretty decent on the road against most teams. So I look at that and I say, yeah, this team has the potential and the capability to win MLS Cup this year. Now, with that, there's caveats saying that anything can happen. I mean, if you look at LA Galaxy, if Turnbull, their goalkeeper, or Tyler Miller, no, that's LAFC. Tyler Miller's LAFC. LA Galaxy is Turnbull. No, Bingham. They got Bingham, right? Bingham. If Bingham goes down for LA Galaxy, they're not going to make MLS Cup. If Tyler Miller goes down for LAFC, they're not making MLS Cup. At the end of the day, this is a league where players go down with season-ending injuries. And it can change the entire outlook of a team. And so for me to sit there and say, well, if this player goes down, that's going to, that means no MLS Cup. Sure, that's exactly what that could mean. But I have to base it purely on what's available in front of me. Is this team, as constructed, looking at no other caveats, if no injuries were at play, if no yellow card accumulation was at play, if we had our perfect 23 out there, do I believe this team is capable of winning MLS Cup? Do you believe this team is capable of winning MLS Cup with the preferred 23-man roster?
I still feel that there's something missing from the team that's not really talent based, but more mentality based. Number one is I still feel like there's a huge difference between home and the way they play home and the way it played. Sure, they started well playing away in the beginning, but then it almost feels like they're going back to this whole thing of like they're gonna play a lot more cautious playing away, and also we would have to see how much they've improved when it comes to them being in a situation, how they're going to keep their cool being in a situation where the ref's decisions don't go their way, et cetera, et cetera. Like I said, I think they'll make it. I think it can make it close with this team, but I feel like there's something missing of it that can be improved for next year. That makes me think that no, I don't think they'll be able to score or make it to win the cup. Sergio says that's where the spending comes into play. If you look at the last few champions, Atlanta, Toronto, Seattle, and Portland, those are the teams that spend the most on top-end talent. We can compete in the regular season, but in the playoffs, I don't know. That's where the money shows. Away from home, no, we still have not proven to be able to get results on the road.
So I'm gonna challenge that Portland spends the most. I'm looking at Portland, and now their highest paid player is more than our highest paid player. That's not a surprise. $2.3 million. Okay, it's fine. Their next highest paid player is $1.3 million for Sebastian Blanco. And then their third highest paid player is $1.2 million, Brian Fernandez, who they just brought in. We have two players that are making over $1 million right now. So we're spending the money. It's just we're going about it differently. And that's, I think, the difference there is that we're not going out. We're not spending the money on these players in hopes that they come in and perform for us, because that's lost money if they don't. Instead, we're spending less money to bring the player in, letting them letting us find out and them find out, are they good enough to compete, and then letting them prove it. And if they do, then we'll spend the money. We'll keep them here. Morrow making $1.2 million, that's a damn good investment over the long term that we've spent. We've had him for 5 years now? And look at how much his salary has grown. What does that say to other players that have the possibility to come to the Dynamo in this summer transfer window, that are young players that believe they're good enough to do the same thing that Morrow did as a winger or as an attacking midfielder? Hey, come to the Dynamo, prove it, and we're going to pay you. We're willing to pay the money. It's just we want to see that the player is actually going to be worth that money. And to be fair, after Kubo, can you blame the Dynamo for not wanting to pay a player up front?
True.
So that's the difference. It's not that we're not paying players. It's that we're not paying them up front. We want them to come and show it. However, we're paying Kiki Struna $1.25 million. Now, let's caveat that. That's what the MLS Players Association numbers show. What does that number really mean when it all breaks down? Well, that includes his transfer fee across the years of his contract. So you're seeing the transfer fee up front in his contract. So really, he's probably making $600 to $750K, and they can buy that down. And then his transfer fee was probably close to about $1 million, and that's $1 million spread across 2 seasons. Roughly, that's the contract that they've signed him for. That's not to say they're not going to renew his contract at getting close to that 2 years or at the end of this year even. But that's just how much they paid for him up front. If Kiki had come over and we had spent $1.5 million to bring him over and he was nothing, that's a waste of $1.5 million. I would rather do it this way because it's smart investing. It allows you to find the Mauro Manotases, the Kiki Strunas, although again a little bit different with Kiki, the Adam Lundqvists, the Albert Elises. It allows you to find those young players that have plenty of raw potential, and if you have the right system and the right coach, to develop them either into long-term players a la Mauro Manotas, or players that are going to go and become selling points for you overseas elsewhere and make a bunch of money in the process. Look, we know how good Brian Fernandez is going to be for Portland because we've seen him play. But before he played, we assumed he would be good. But you look at how much they paid for him. They paid the same amount for him as we did for Kiki. Again, it's all shifting numbers. It's all different depending on your perspective. Where are you spending your money? Where is your priority set? How are you spending your money? For Portland, it's not that they're spending more money. They are spending more money, but they're doing it a little different. They're not doing it the same way everybody thinks they are. It's not their high-end talent that they're spending on. They've got 3 players, again, that are making over $1 million. Only 3. It's just those types of things to me are interesting because that's the skewed perspective that I talk about.
Sorry, I'm processing all of this.
You're good.
Because we all know how complicated MLS financials are.
Yeah, they're very complicated.
And when you have your MLS pundits always harping about Atlanta, harping about Portland, Seattle, and LAFC, and apparently everything is right with them, then everybody thinks that their way is the correct way. The Dynamos played well, but I think the best way to see what they're made of is when they're in a position, a do or die situation. And I think last year with the Open Cup, you saw like Joe Willis and Mauro coming out big. And now, hopefully, with Kiki Struna and Maynor, hopefully we just keep building up of these type of players that have them in the right mentality to lead this team into closer to their goal, which is winning MLS Cup.
So let me put this in even more perspective for you and for Sergio right now. Orlando City, they have 3 players making more than $1 million right now. They have a third player that is making $900,000. Okay. Nani is making $2.3 million. Would you say at this point in the season Nani's been worth $2.3 million? Sasha Kleiston making $1 million essentially, and Dom Dwyer making $1.3 million. Are you going to tell me that those 3 players compared to Omaro Manotas, compared to Akiki Struna, are more valuable than those two players right now? It's not how much you spend, it's how you spend. That's the point that I wish could get across to some people. It's not how much you spend, it's how you spend your money. If you spend your money wisely. Now, look, Atlanta can spend their money frivolously, but has it helped them this year? Has it really been to their benefit this year? If it wasn't for the media bias towards Atlanta United right now, would they even be considered a top team in the league? If you look at their on-field performance, they would have been power ranked as 13th or 14th minimum. Lower, like going down. Because they're not that great of a team this year. So it really isn't about how much money you're spending. It's about where you're spending it and how you're spending it. And I feel like the Dynamo are proving that if you spend well and you spend properly, then you don't need to spend $13 million a year to have a good competitive team. And I know the old adage of players that you spend the money on that are your high-profile players will show up in the big matches. But let's be real. Albert Elise and Mara Manotas and Joe Willis showed up last year in Open Cup. And trust me when I say
against the LAFC.
Philly was taking Open Cup seriously. LAFC was taking Open Cup seriously at that point. Sporting KC, the match before, was taking Open Cup seriously. So you can't tell me these players aren't capable of showing up in big matches. Look, in a match, that dollar sign means squat. So I just hope that absorbs in a little bit. And Sergio, that's exactly right. Orlando and Chicago are the examples of how to spend money incorrectly. It's how to spend money on players, sure. I mean, if you gave me $12 million to spend on players, I could sure go spend the $12 million on players. That doesn't mean I'm going to field a competitive, top-level competitive MLS team. Just because I have the money doesn't guarantee anything. And Sergio, that's the thing, right? I agree with you. I want the Dynamo to break that status quo. I want the Dynamo to smash the media narrative right now. Because if they did, you would see teams starting to adopt that strategy a little more, especially teams that are already towards the bottom of the table. Your Sporting KC, within 2 to 3 seasons, they would clean most of their house out. There is no way they'd be paying Graham Zusi $650 million or 650 million. Good God, we're talking. That's Lionel Messi numbers. That's absurd. 650,000 a year. They wouldn't be paying him that much money. So, but I want to see the Dynamo do it, and I would be content if the Dynamo make it to the Western Conference Finals and beat LAFC or LA Galaxy or Seattle Sounders or Portland Timbers in the Western Conference Finals, even if they ended up losing an MLS Cup, because it would shut up the media narrative, at least to some degree, that the best teams are the ones that spend money. But again, I fall back on Seattle's not spending as much money as people seem to think. Now, you look at their salary figures, and those are inflated a little bit by $1 to $2 million, because each team is paying 2 specific players more than $1.5 million. Diego Valeri, $2.3 million, and for Seattle, it's Ladero making roughly $2 million, right at about $2 million. They have other players that they're paying roughly $300,000 to $400,000 to $500,000 that aren't as good as the players we're paying less than that. Look, there are teams that are spending $500,000 to $600,000, and they don't even get the quality of a Minor Figueroa that we're paying $70,000 to. Look, FC Dallas basically gave him to us for free. And he's one of the best players on the pitch. Match in and match out. It's not how much you spend. It's where and how you spend the money. And yes, it's a dead horse and I'm beating it to the ground, but it's important to talk about. And thank you, Sergio, for talking about it. I am perfectly fine with other people having a different opinion, and I want this type of stuff talked about, but it requires people talking about it. So thank you, Sergio, for talking about it.
So let me kind of recap something. Sergio talks about let's leave Atlanta out of the equation because that is pretty much an exception to the rule. But talks about Portland, Seattle, and Toronto. How long did it take for them to get to where they were at when they won the cup? How many? What I'm getting at is the Dynamo in 2016 pretty much redid their whole roster and yet still made it to the Western Conference final.
Got trashed in the Western Conference final, but we made it there.
Yes, we got trashed in the Western Conference final, but it was something nobody was expecting because it was a rebuilding situation.
Mm-hmm.
How long did these other teams, how many years have they had to continuously build off on the previous roster and bring in better players and try to add, pat up their talent a little bit more? Took them a while to get to where they're at. You gotta preen it up. Atlanta United, it took them a year where they, if I'm not mistaken, did they make it to playoffs their first year?
Who? Atlanta United?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did.
Yes, and so if they did, I think they went out in the first round. And they already had, if I'm not mistaken, Joseph Martinez.
Yeah, they did. They had
And all
Joseph
these players.
Martinez in the first year. Yeah.
So this is a building process, and I'm sure that if it's not this year, like Sean hopes, I think maybe next year, once we add a couple of more pieces to this lineup, whether it's in the starting 11 or maybe kind of bolster up the bench a little bit more, then yeah, maybe we can say that this team will be fighting for the championship against other teams that are higher paid. But this is a process.
So two things, and this is one thing kind of you spurred it because you made me remember. Seattle has made the playoffs every year, and Sergio just said that. And there's a reason for that. Prior to coming into MLS, Seattle had a pre-built over many, many, many years youth development pipeline and youth academy system that had already been in place for a long time before they came in MLS. So guess what? They didn't have to worry about spending money on depth players because they could just bring them up through the academy system that they already had in place. The Dynamo didn't have that luxury and still don't fully have that luxury. Someday we'll get there, but it's going to take time. It's not an overnight thing when it comes to youth development academy success. The other thing is we're paying Memo and Minor, two players who are integral to the opening of our season right now and have been through the first part of the season. And they're making $70,250 each. I'm going to read off just a few of the players making $70,000 right now in MLS, and you tell me if you even recognize who these players are. Adrian Zendejas, Tyler Freeman, Eric Dick, Ryan Telfer, Subasa Endo, John Baquero, Sean Melvin, Pierre Da Silva. Now I'm going to go the other way. Marcus Epps, Kyle Smith, Gregory Ranjit Singh, Renzo Zabrano, Kendall McIntosh, Daniel Bedoya. I recognize the last name, definitely not that first name. Juan Pablo Torres, Isaac Anking, Cameron Lancaster. The list continues to go on. My point is, for $70,250, we have absolutely maximized the quality that we get out of those two players. Period. Other teams, what they're spending on players at that price point, maybe one team, two teams are getting their values worth. I mean, it's Santos, my favorite bench players in fantasy MLS. Yes, those $70,000 players are amazing because they don't play. You know they're not going to play, so they're not going to get you any value in
Those
terms
sound
of
like the kind of players that'll go up and down between USL and MLS.
probably very very likely. And most teams have. Columbus Crew only has one, Colorado has two, but most teams have more than two or three at that level, or at that price point. And these are for the most part players that don't on a consistent basis don't have any impact on an MLS match. They don't see MLS match time. And so now an exception to that is Seattle's Nuhu, their right back, who is one of the speediest guys I've seen.
Who I believe came out of Seattle Sounders 2/Tacoma Defiance.
He did, absolutely, and he's only making 70,700, but that's 730. But that's kind of my point, right? It goes back to Seattle having that built-in development pipeline. They can afford to bring in those players and play them, just like we did with Memo. They can do the same thing where they can afford to play those players and not pay them a lot of money because they're coming through their pipeline already. Those players want to play in that system. And so it's important to remember that, though, that, in reality, for what we're getting out of Memo and Minor, they should be making $300, $400, $500 each, easy in salary, easily. And if those two players were making that amount, and if players made the salary based on their performances on the pitch, then you would see that those numbers actually skew towards the Dynamo actually spending quite a bit of money, technically. Because, again, we maximize every dollar that we spend. Points per dollar, the Dynamo rank first in the league or second in the league. That's impressive. That means, again, we're spending wisely and spending in the right spots. Now, to Sergio's point, and you made the same point, as well, Edson, which is your big-time, big-name players. Those tend to be the ones that come up and play well in playoffs because they just find that extra gear, or they find that extra will to push through at the end of a match or whatever it is, and they thrive on the pressure and the big moments. And I won't argue that is something that typically tends to be a hallmark of those players. But that's not to say that you can't find those players that aren't making that kind of money already. And Albert Elise is perfectly capable of that. I would even say that it's very possible that a Minor Figueroa could do that. A Kiki Struna could do that. These players can come up big. We saw it with Joe Willis in the Open Cup. They absolutely can come up big. And it doesn't matter how much they're making. Joe Willis is one of the most underpaid goalkeepers in this league. Criminally underpaid goalkeepers in the league. And he's impressive. He's really good when he wants to be. And I get it. I understand the desire to have somebody that makes more money, that's a big name player, because then you have somebody you can put the blame on when the team struggles. Right now, when the team struggles, who do you put the blame on? It either falls to Wilmer or it falls to the team, but not an individual player, unless your name is Tommy McNamara. Thanks, Callow, who's probably not even listening right now. And to him, I say, screw you. I'm just kidding, Callow. We love you. But, it's harder to blame a specific player when they're not making top dollars, and I don't know. I struggle with this kind of separation between, what's more important, spending the money and getting a top player that maybe is going to be successful in MLS playoffs, or spending, less money on a player and seeing throughout the season if he's going to be that type of player and trying to put him in a position to succeed. And look, even big name players struggle in matches from time to time. Look at Rooney's red card not that long ago. Totally threw off DC United's entire match. That's the difference. When the Dynamo have a player that goes out due to a card accumulation or an injury, Juan David Cabezas, we got players that are willing to step in and step up. When Kyoto was not available to start the season, Memo stepped in and stepped up. When Rooney went out, the team, DC United, couldn't figure it out after that. There's a difference. It's important to remember. I think we've beat this horse into the ground because it is literally about to be 8 o'clock. So we've talked about this for an hour, which is impressive. But I do think we probably should talk about something else, Edson.
I agree.
I mean, we can keep talking about it. If you guys in chat want to keep talking about it, you say something, we'll keep talking about it. But I think that it's probably time we.
Or you can call.
And that number to call in, Edson, would be
956-622-5977.
And it's up here somewhere. Up here. I think it's like right over here.
No. Other way.
Over there.
Yes.
Right there. It's right there. Right there.
Right there.
Call that number now.
Operators are standing by, willing to help you.
Unlike last night when I called into our down in the valley and they didn't answer my call. You're not gonna ever live it down. Don't worry.
Oh, man. I wasn't expecting people were going to call.
I sent you a Discord message, man.
I'm in the middle of a show. I'm not checking my Discord messages.
I meant to send it to you earlier than that. Here's an interesting name for you, making $74,250. Sebastian Ibiaga.
Yes. New York City FC, ex-San Antonio FC, and ex-Dynamo / RGV.
Corey Burke making $75,938. That's actually a pretty solid investment by Philly. Bradford Jameson for LA Galaxy making $76,403. So we're starting to get into those players that actually do have a little bit of an impact. Okay, I take back what I said about Joe Willis. Tyler Miller, LAFC goalkeeper, $77,565. Criminally underpaid. Holy crap. That's crazy. That is crazy to me. But again, that's MLS in a nutshell, right? Your starting goalkeeper on LAFC is making less than the starting goalkeepers for every other team. And not just like a little bit less, a lot less. It's crazy. Santos says expect the unexpected, Edson.
I guess I will. So one of the things that was mentioned during the post game conferences, there was big of mixed reactions between coach and players as to why the team played as bad as they did in the second half. Tomas Martinez made the comment saying, well, we were tired. Like this break wasn't good for us. We got players who had not played before coming out of injury. That's why we dropped down that bad in the second half. Wilmer kind of hinted that it was the fact that they were a bit too overconfident against Austin Bold, and DeMarcus Beasley said, we just forgot how to play soccer. We forgot how to do the simple things, and we overcomplicated this game ourselves, and it almost came to bite us in the butt. So, out of those three comments, who do you think? Who do you agree with more, Sean?
I mean, okay. Was Cabrera one of the options? I might have missed that one. I heard one of them. I don't think I heard
Yeah, so the first one I said, Tomas Martinez said they were just tired. Cabrera said they were very overconfident in the second half, and DeMarcus Beasley saying that they just forgot how to play soccer, that they overcomplicated things.
I mean, I think there's a bit of 2 and 3 in there. I think there is something to be said for one from Tomas Martinez, but I think that is I think that's more mental exhaustion than physical exhaustion at that point. And that does play a role in how players perform.
But such a huge drop off from the halftime.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's not just that. That's what I'm saying. It's not. There's not. You can't point to any one of those being the only reason. It's a combination of all three. They overcomplicated things because they had mental exhaustion and were tired, and because they were mentally exhausted and tired, they went into the second half with the assumption that, oh, we're already beating them, they're going to roll over and play dead. Or I don't even think that was because of mental exhaustion. I think that I think they went into the second half with the overconfidence, but a player or a team who's not mentally exhausted and who's not overcomplicating things is still going to be able to, bounce back when the other team scores a goal and deal with it. I just think that it was a combination of all of that stuff plus a whole lot more. I just think that, we can't shy away from the fact that Austin Bold played a pretty good second half and showed that they're better than that first half showed. And look, it's a tale of two halves for Austin Bold as much as it was a tale of two halves for us too. Austin Bold came out and played like crap in the first half and then came out in the second half and played a lot better. Mm-hmm. And, part of that falls on coaching. It's Wilmer's responsibility to have his players ready to go for the second half. But we see it with really good teams, especially in a competition like Open Cup, that nobody really wants to necessarily take seriously, especially when you're playing a USL club. So I like I said, I think it's a combination of all three. Actually, I know it's a combination of all three, and probably even more things that weren't said. But I also think it's unfair to try to point out just one thing, because it's not just one thing. It's an accumulation of multiple things. And, if players are tired now at this point in the season and having had a full week off, how are they going to be? Well, I guess not a full week off, but no, they had a full week off. Mm-hmm. Having a full week off, how are they going to be when we hit the stretch in July and August where we're playing a lot of matches in a really short period of time? And those are all league matches. Doesn't even account for the extra Open Cup match that we have to play next week, the extra Leagues Cup, aka the BBVA Classic, that we have to play against Club America, which we've heard is going to be RGV players almost predominantly, exclusively.
Pretty much.
How are we gonna, how are our players gonna fare when push comes to shove and we hit that grind of a lot of matches in a short period of time? And then if they can't handle it now because they're mentally exhausted or physically exhausted at this point from what they've already played, how are they going to handle it when we hit playoffs? If that's the excuse that they're going to give, then yeah, we don't have the players for playoffs and MLS Cup run. But
then going back with what I said, it seems like to be a mentality being an issue. That's why I applaud well, not literally applauded, but I was really I agreed with the way that DeMarcus Beasley, with his experience, his leadership, they asked him about it. Well, was one of the reasons that you guys were tired, blah blah blah, and he's like, I don't make up these excuses. Like this is just it's just ridiculous. This is what we do, and we showed that we had the power to overrun Austin in the first half. Granted, yeah, he says he said that he applauded the effort by Austin Bold to come back in the second half. He said, but the fact is, it's like you take a look at like the girls at the U.S. women's national team. He said it's time that we need to take not just a page out of their book, but their whole book, and saying, yes, we're playing against a lesser team, but we're not going to let off the gas for it. And that's one of the things that I liked about the way DeMarcus Beasley talked about in the post-game conference. Whereas, Tomas, he was more like, it'll pass kind of thing, because we were tired. And that's why I'm getting at it. So it seems to me like the mentality of quick to find excuses, like for in this case Tomas, like that might be something, that might keep him back, and why a lot of people maybe don't necessarily agree that he is the best man for the spot. And Sergio, going on with your comments, he says, I don't understand the hate that Derek has been getting from that game. I thought he was fine, just got unlucky a couple of times. Well, number one, first goal, that was a deflection off of Juan David Cabezas. Really, there wasn't much he can do. And the second goal, I'm going to be honest, that was not Derek's fault. That was Juan David Cabezas and DeMarcus Beasley's fault for seeing that Isaac Promise was, especially DeMarcus Beasley, because Juan David Cabezas was in the middle of the field, right, outside the box, because Kevin had somebody as well as Alejandro Formayor had somebody he was marking. And Cabezas wasn't marking, but he had no clear view of what Isaac Promise was doing. DeMarcus Beasley did. And yet he still stayed in the left side of the field without marking anybody. I don't know. I don't recall if there was somebody else, if their left back or right back actually was coming up. That's why he stayed in that area. But he could have easily had called Juan David Cabezas like, hey, you got somebody that's out wide open. What happened? They take the shot. Tyler Derrick makes an amazing save, but the ball lands directly to an unmarked Isaac Promise, and that's what happened. This isn't on Tyler Derrick more than and the defense that completely lost their concentration.
I got nothing to add.
See, this is what I love to talk about. But and that's the way it is. I think yes, Tyler Derrick is not in his best moment. We know Joe Willis is the best goalkeeper we have right now. It's his time. It's his time right now. But Tyler Derrick hasn't been crap. Sure, he's made some mistakes. No goalkeeper is exempt from mistakes. So now I don't know if this whole hate against Tyler Derrick is not really about something that happens on the pitch, but more along the lines that they just have that hate against him from what happened in his personal life. Why can't people separate one from the other? Why are people blinded by that unfortunate situation and let that influence what they think of him on the pitch? Have people forgotten so quickly how much Tyler Derrick has given this team? I'm pretty sure if he continues to get minutes and continue to play, whether with RGV or with the Dynamo in Open Cup, I'm sure that he'll get back into his groove, and it will be an interesting competition between him and Joe Willis, or we might see Tyler Derrick leave for another team, and we can get money off of it, a little bit of money, a percentage of the money, but money nonetheless. I don't think it's fair for people to bash on Tyler Derrick and focusing in on the really minor things when he has shown up when he needs to. I'm not saying that I want him back as a starter over Joe Willis, because Joe Willis has been clutch as well, and it's a difficult decision for coach to make once both of them are in their top form. But if for some reason Joe Willis either gets injured or loses his form, then we have a good backup in Tyler Derrick, who other MLS teams would wish they had as their starting keeper. And then below him, you have Michael Nelson, who is pretty much continuing to develop, and we have seen a lot of promise out of him. Sergio says, I was sitting in the supporter section. Derek started crying after EB was chanting his name. Tears of joy, of course. The guy loves the Dynamo. The guy loves this team. I think it's unfair for fans to bash him when he really hasn't been that bad when he's played. In this match, the people who had a bigger fault in these goals were people out on the field, not necessarily Tyler Derrick. Tyler Derrick, other than those 2 goals, which were unfortunate, he came up really big. And that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, the Tyler Derrick thing is interesting to me because you have kind of 2 worlds colliding. You have the world of real life and the ugliness that is real life colliding with the sports world, which tends to be anti-ugly, tends to try to stay away from the ugly and in some people's opinions, sweep it under the rug or shy away from it so that it doesn't come to light. And I look at the situation, I think, differently than most people because I tend to fall in the camp of people are human and they make mistakes, and you can't go with a capital punishment level of hatred because someone makes a mistake or makes multiple mistakes. Society in general, and I'm going to go a little politically, but people are going to deal with it and it'll be okay. Society in general has gotten away from a mentality of forgiveness and has gotten to the point where if I disagree with you or you disagree with me, that's enough for you to dislike and even extend into hatred. And I come from a belief system that is based on love first and loving one another and loving your neighbor. And that means that when somebody makes a mistake, I put myself in their shoes and I try to understand what led up to it. That's why I'm so that's why I push people and why I say so much. Let's wait for the story to actually come out. Because when you make a knee-jerk reaction, if you were that person put in their situation, how would you feel? Would you hate yourself? Would you hate other people? Would you want people to look at your situation and the reality and truth of your situation and go, yeah, he made a mistake. He's owned up to the fact that he made the mistake. He's done what he can to get past the mistake and to deal with it. He's served his time for the punishment that was levied. He's done the time for the quote unquote crime. Would you want them to forgive you? And I think that fans need to remember that what he did was horrible and absolutely terrible and should never be done to anyone, let alone a woman. But it happened. It's a thing that took place. He can't go back and undo what has been done. And neither can you. And I'm not saying you accept the fact that what he did was okay, but you accept the fact that he did what he did, and he is apologetic, remorseful, and wants to make sure he never does it again. Really and truly, that's all we can ask of each other. Because we're human. We are going to make mistakes. We are going to step the wrong way. Nobody is perfect. And that especially extends to sports people, to athletes, to celebrities, but specifically athletes. Because athletes live and thrive on moments. And a moment in their life is just as profound and just as intense as a moment on the pitch. And so while it's hard for us to understand what would get him to that point, we have to understand that his intensity is that much stronger than ours. He gets frustrated in different ways because he's an athlete. It's just how his brain is wired. And like I said, what he did is not okay. But he's human. He made a mistake. You do not get the right to continue punishing him for something that he's already atoned for. You don't get that right. All right, rant over. This is apparently the night for rants, Edson.
I know. And it's
It's okay. There's gonna be plenty of sound bites from this episode.
I know. So moving on, we already talked about Open Cup. So next week, next Tuesday, the Houston Dynamo will host once again an Open Cup match. This time against Minnesota United SA.
Whoa. That went a total different direction than I was expecting. I think my biggest concern is, does Darwin Quintero play this match? If he doesn't, we can absolutely go out and beat Minnesota United. If he plays this match, it's going to be a lot tougher to win this match.
Yeah.
He is that good. And we saw it when we played up in Minnesota, how good he is and how good he can be. I still think we could beat him here, of course, but if he plays, I mean, he's just another level of striker. I mean, he's as good as Morrow, but probably better. But it'll be interesting to see for sure.
My biggest question to me is not whether what Minnesota brings to the table, it's what the Dynamo's going to bring to the table. Are they going to repeat the lineup that they did this past Tuesday? Or will this time they bring more RGV players because that Saturday they're playing in Portland?
I do think we're going to see more RGV players for this upcoming match. I think there's a very good possibility we'll see 3 RGV players, probably 4 like total, and then 3 that actually see minutes. I think Eric Bird's not going to be one of them. I take that back. He's injured out for the season. That was bad of me.
No,
Bad.
Eric played. Remember, he played this Tuesday.
Did he?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't watch the whole match. I had to be up at 2:00 in the morning, remember? Okay, good. Well, Eric will be back for this match, this upcoming match. Thank you for making me feel really foolish, Edson. Well done. Of course, I did that to myself. I think that we probably see I think that we see Michael Salazar not only get minutes, but I think we see him get meaningful minutes in this match. Maybe
more than 10
even,
minutes.
Maybe even possibly start. Although with the way that Pena played, I wouldn't be surprised if Pena got another start. I think we do see Morrow rest again, though, which I think is fine. I'm okay with that. And I think we see Marlon Hairston start. I think we see Memo start. I hope we don't see Tomas start, although that probably means Tommy Mack is going to start, and God help us all. Sergio says Quintero played last year here, and he did absolutely nothing that game. Well, that's good. Maybe this will be a repeat of that. But if it's Kevin Garcia and Alejandro Fuenmayor, I have concerns about Quintero going against them. He will have their lunch, literally. So yeah, but I do think we'll see 3 to 4 RGV players called up for this match. I think it's also a good opportunity to get our depth players that are Dynamo depth players minutes, because eventually Elise is going to be back, Kyoto is going to be back, Minor is going to be back, Kiki is. Yeah. I think Kiki will be back soon enough.
AJD.
AJD will be back soon enough.
Sergio, we can't do that. He says, I think we should take the Minnesota game more seriously and send RGV players to Portland. We can't. They would have to sign them into permanent contracts.
That's not true. They can sign them to short-term.
But short terms are, according to the rules, they don't apply. Right. They don't apply for MLS league games.
Yep.
It only applies for Open Cup, CONCACAF Champions League, and friendly matches.
Yep. The only time that you can sign additional USL players to MLS or to short-term MLS contracts is if you have a hardship going on, like Sporting KC with their 32 players that are currently out with injuries. The actual number is far less than that, but it sure feels like they have 32 players out with injuries at this point. But yeah, I think we see a mixture of RGV and Dynamo depth players. I think we'll see most of the starters again get rest, which is good. I think giving them a 2-week break is probably good. I continue to think, and I know I said this, but I'm going to say it again. I think that Tomas gets this match off, just because I think he does need that rest. And I do think Tommy Mack will be the starter there, which makes me cringe. But at the same time,
at least it's not he won't be out on the wing.
Yeah, no, I'd much rather see him at attacking mid. And look, the guy has technical ability. The problem is he's technically playing when everybody else is trying to just play. And it does overcomplicate things. He tries to make passes that other players aren't ready or expecting, and it just doesn't quite come off for him. And if the pass did work out, though, he would look like a genius, and he would be one of the best players in MLS because he's so crafty and so creative. But I think that's part of it, is just that he's playing a different style when everybody else is playing a specific style. And that just tends to end up with what you're seeing, which is passes that don't quite, hit their mark, and, runs that aren't quite there, and things of that nature. And I don't know. We'll see. I mean, Tuesday is going to be here really quick because it's Thursday already.
So
which does mean, of course, that Generation Orange next week will not be on Tuesday.
We'll probably have to do the doubleheader on Wednesday then.
Okay.
I'm heading out of town on Thursday.
Oh. Or I could have Jacob come on the show and be my co-host for a week. I'll have to get some information from you to make that happen.
That can happen too.
And
none of you have the login to the.
That's what I said. I'll have to get some information from you. That's what I was referring to. The login for the YouTube. As long as I can get to the login of the YouTube, I can run Stream Elements or something on my end.
Mm-hmm.
Or OBS. Actually, I have OBS on here, I think, but I can make it work. I'll figure it out. But no, we'll probably just run Wednesday. We'll just do the double header, which means we'll run 7 to 11 on Wednesday. Or we can just do 7 to 10 and just do a combined DITV and Gen Orange next week.
Back to the Orange Power Hour or whatever we called it before.
That's Orange Power 3 hours, dude. Orange Power Hour. I think let's do that. Let's just say we're going to do it. Talk to Jacob about it. Make sure he's cool with it. Jacob was on earlier. See if he's still here. Sergio says Atlanta and Charleston are in OT right now.
Yeah.
Oh, I would love to see Atlanta knocked out by Charleston Battery. That would That would just be everything. Keep me updated on that, Sergio, if you would, please. All right, so let's see, Edson. What is your, since we're not going to have a chance to do this otherwise, what's your prediction for the Minnesota match?
We squeak by 2-1.
Okay. Who scores the goals?
One of them is going to be Ronaldo. The other one's going to be Michael Salazar.
I noticed you don't call him Pena. Is it because you really like that name, Ronaldo? Just kidding.
Pena is so simple.
Okay, I believe we win that match. I'm going to go with. Actually, okay, I'm going to throw you a curveball. I think this one goes to penalty kicks, and I think we win in penalties. And I think the winning penalty kick is scored by Michael Salazar.
Bold predictions.
I think that was a pretty damn bold prediction. I don't think I need to go bold. That's my actual and my bold all wrapped into one.
I think my bold prediction is somehow like Minnesota just craps their pants and everything goes bad for them, and Chuy Enriquez gets called up and he scores a brace.
Ooh. I would be completely okay with Chuy Enriquez getting a call up at this point. I would be on board for that, actually. All right. So we've talked a lot of things today, but there's something in particular we haven't talked about today.
Women's World Cup.
Women's World Cup.
Yeah.
So today, Australia played Brazil, and China played
South Africa.
South Africa, thank you. China won 1-0.
What a goal.
Yeah, it was a pretty good goal.
Ying, I think it's
Li Ying. Yes. And China looked a lot better than I thought they would. However, this is South Africa. And they're not exactly a powerhouse in soccer, let alone women's soccer.
Yeah.
But they still played pretty well. Katlana is otherworldly in terms of talent. Watching her play is magnificent. And I'm glad that she is a Dash player. Mm-hmm. We are very fortunate, to say the least. But there are a lot of players on that team that are not up to World Cup standards. And it's unfortunate. It was a like I said, it was a good goal. The marking it was pretty bad though for it, and she should have not had a free run. Well, she didn't even really have a free run. She just got around the defender. But that service into the box was incredible. And then in the Australia match, Australia-Brazil go up 2-0. And at that point, you think Australia are basically knocked out of the World Cup because they lost their first match 1-0 to Italy. Mm-hmm. And so if they don't, you're going in thinking if they don't get points in this match, that's probably the World Cup for them. And they score 3 unanswered goals, one of which is a own goal by Brazil on a controversial VAR offsides, no offsides call. A rule came into play that is a very little known rule, which is that a player cannot be ruled offsides if the defender if the player is not it. So you can be involved in the play, which Sam Kerr was, but as long as you are not causing or interfering with the defender passing the ball backwards or the defender making a play, you are not part of the offsides call. And so Sam Kerr was not offsides, and the defender for Brazil headed the ball back towards her goalkeeper, and the goalkeeper just didn't get to it, and it went in the goal. And Australia absolutely needed those 3 points. They were some scrappy goals, but it's what Australia needed to win. One of the goals, just the goalkeeper, Barbara, I don't know what she was thinking there. That second goal that went in for Australia, it was not well struck. It was a shot and a cross all in one. And it looked like Sam Kerr was going to get a foot on it. But at the last second, she wasn't able to get there. And the goalkeeper was playing.
Oh, I see. Yes.
The goalkeeper was playing. Damn it, Atlanta. The goalkeeper, Barbara, was playing Sam Kerr's redirection versus playing the original ball in.
Correct.
And the original ball just went in the goal. And by the time she realized it, her reaction was super late to it. And so, that was.
And I think you can say the same thing about the third goal.
Yeah. She should have had both goals really covered, but she didn't. It was definitely not her finest hour, which was interesting because in the first half, the Brazilian defense and goalkeeper looked really good up until like the 40th minute, which was when Australia scored their first. And even after Australia scored their first, Australia the entire match were pushing, and they were giving Brazil some problems. But it seemed like Brazil at some point eventually just broke down and couldn't figure it out. And it's interesting to me, too, because Australia has who did Italy play? Was it Korea? No. Yeah, Korea. Italy and Korea. Was that who they played?
Italy, they're playing Jamaica.
Jamaica. Yeah, that's the other team in their
Yes.
group. So Australia still has their match against Jamaica, and Italy and Brazil will play their final match. Italy is currently top in the standings right now, because they've got the one win. They play tomorrow against Jamaica. That's tomorrow. If Italy wins that match, they'll go to top of the group and secure their spot in. Well, actually, they technically won't secure their spot with 2 wins because they could lose to Brazil and Australia could beat Jamaica, which would leave 3 teams in that group with 6 points each, which would be really incredible, actually.
Which goes back to goal differential.
And even then, if a team has 6 points and they are in third place, they're likely going to be one of the 2 third place teams that advances. And so I do think it's likely that coming out of that group, if Brazil beat Italy, then it's very likely that all 3 of those teams advance to the round of 16 knockout stage. I liked what I saw from Brazil. Like I said, I thought defensively up through the majority of the first half and even kind of the early part of the second half, that they looked pretty sound defensively. I don't feel like they got broken down defensively so much as just the goalkeeper didn't make saves that she should have made and really wasn't expecting the plays that were made. And to Australia's credit, they never gave up. They never stopped playing. And they gave Brazil everything that Brazil could handle and more, obviously.
Yeah.
What I think I enjoyed seeing was Marta come back for this match because she didn't play in the first match. She was coming off an injury, and she played so well in that first match, or so well in this match back, that you couldn't even tell she was coming off injury. She had every bit the pace and technical ability as if she'd never left the pitch to begin with. And Christian, that hat trick that she had in the opener against Jamaica definitely gave her confidence. She looked even better in this match than she did with that than when she had that hat trick against Jamaica, because she was playing balls that were just really well played. She was making space for herself. She was playing 1-2s with Marta and just creating opportunities for Marta and other Brazilian players. The one thing I will say is Australia's defense, pretty solid, but they're definitely slow to play out of the back. They want to play out of the back. They want to play a possession-style game, but their team's really not constructed to play that style as effectively as other teams would be. And so it'll be interesting to see as this tournament continues on how Australia deal with kind of, how to make it happen.
Yeah. I think it just goes to show from what you said about, how Marta played and Christian played. It just gives it more merit to the hustle that the what's their nickname? Australia, what do they call them? The Matildas?
The Matildas, yeah.
It just goes to show like how much effort the Matildas put into this match to pretty much nullify these players in the second half. And not only nullify them so that they won't score anymore, but create the opportunities to score 3 goals against Brazil, which is really one of the top teams in this group. So, huge credit to the Australian national team, and hopefully, it'd be interesting to see them play in the next round.
You know, the other thing is moving away from the 2 matches today is how the U.S. played against Thailand. And look, Thailand is definitely not a powerhouse in soccer, women's or men's, but they made the Women's World Cup, and the U.S. went and laid 13 on them. And there's been a lot of hubbub the last couple of days since the U.S. did that the women's national team should have stopped after scoring 5 or 6 goals instead of going after the 13. And once you score 10 goals, you really shouldn't be going after 13. Those types of comments that show some respect for your opponent, etc. But I think what the women from the U.S. women's national team had to say, I think what they had to say changed my mind about how you approach that as a player. If your team is up by that score and you start slowing down and not playing your all, and it's something that would be noticeable, then that's disrespectful to the other team. As a someone who played soccer, I can tell you that if teams did that to us, I would have been pissed.
Yeah, because they don't respect you as a competitor anymore.
Yep. That they feel that you can't even compete with them. They feel that you're not even good enough to do it on your own, regardless. And Thailand, while they weren't generating much of anything, they've had similar types of score lines against other Asian teams because they have to play them for entry into the World Cup and other international friendlies and smaller tournaments
as well.
Yeah, Asian Cup. And so they've done the same thing to other teams. And so they have been on both sides of it. And so I think their perspective is unique in the sports world, and being able to have both sides of that coin. And, all of them to a T, they didn't feel disrespected by it. They felt respected by it. Like, they appreciated that the U.S. didn't let up, on the world stage. And to the U.S.'s credit, they needed to send a message to France after France, played as well as they did in their opening match. And the U.S. definitely sent the message that, look, we're here and we're not gonna slow down for anybody. Now, I want to see this U.S. team against a better team. That's not to say Thailand can't be a good team, but they definitely were not on the day. I need to see the U.S. against one of the stronger teams. And, to see them play that way, they could likely do that against Chile. That's not to say that Chile isn't a good, decent women's soccer team, but I don't think they're definitely not a top 10 or top even 16 in the world. So they're not going to give the U.S. much challenge. The challenge for the U.S. is going to come in when they have to play the other teams.
Sweden.
Yeah, Sweden in their group, which, by the way, again, Sweden in their group. I mean, come on. And Sweden's looked pretty good too. So you have Sweden, you have France, you have Italy, who's looked pretty good. You have Brazil, who's looked pretty good. Australia, who's looked pretty good. You have England, who looked really good in the first half of their match. I got to think of other teams that have looked good in this one. You've got Canada, who I thought looked decent, although not nearly as good as I would have liked to have seen them play. Sergio says Atlanta scored again. Sergio says, I think people were more upset about the celebrations after the goals. And I get that, but it's also a World Cup, and some of those players, it was their first goals in a World Cup. So it means something to them. and the U.S. women were just having fun. But I certainly do think that, once you get to a certain point, you probably should tone down the celebrations. But in the moment, it's hard to do that. It's hard to rein back, to pull back. And, so I've seen a few people say over the last couple of days, or, really today, we have to remember that these ladies have been asked and told that they need to be more, they have to be more champion-like. And, trying to figure out what that really means. And a lot of times what people are telling them is you've got to be foot on the throat. When you have a team down, you can't just let up, because that can let a team back in. And that extends to, having that mentality that it doesn't matter when or where you score the goal, you enjoy it, you celebrate it. Those things are to be celebrated. And I get the dislike of the celebrations and the way they handled themselves on the pitch. But on the flip side of it, I definitely understand why they would be in the moment enjoying themselves. And because you're not guaranteed to do that every match. And so, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't if you're the U.S. women's national team.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a really hot topic, and both sides have had their arguments. Although I feel like the argument of those who are criticizing the Women's World Cup has skewed, because at the beginning it was about the 13 goals. Then all of a sudden, no, it wasn't because of the goals, it was because of the celebrations. So I think people forget that this isn't a participation trophy competition. This isn't about making everybody feel good. Mm-hmm. This is about going out there, leaving your sweat, your blood, your tears on the field to go and get a championship and be seriously be considered the best of the world. And you're going to go out there, you qualified for this tournament. If you know you don't have the talent, well, you're going to want to go out there and leave it all on the ground, because you know that everybody else is going to do the same thing. And yes, you're going to be overrun by such a good team. But at the end of the day, to them, it feels really good to have played against the best of the world. And yes, they might have been overrun, but who knows when they can play against them again. And it can only help them grow as a national team, help them gain recognition at the world level. People are going to start noticing now. Why should, just because the other team isn't that good, why should the U.S. women's national team bring their level down just to make everybody else happy? It doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what you think is right when it comes to respect and sportsmanship. Well, the opinions that matter on that subject is of those 22 women out there on the field. And if for the players of Thailand, they didn't see it as a disrespect, and you have U.S. women's national team players going up to them after the game and lifting them up and helping them, I think that is a better proof of good sportsmanship from these ladies than letting off the gas because, we don't want to hurt their feelings. This is a competition, and as long as you do what's by the rule book and don't cheat, then that's what matters. That's what matters. And I think a lot of people are kind of caught up in this whole participation trophy. Everybody wins mentality. Nobody should suffer. This isn't a thing where everybody's on the same page. There's gonna be teams that are a whole lot better, and there's gonna be teams that are very weaker. And what would have happened? Let's assume that the U.S. women's national team let off the gas, independent of what Thailand thinks. What would the pundits have said? Oh, they settled. Why didn't they continue to go after them and get more points? You know, are they just settling for mediocrity? Blah blah blah. There would have been a lot more questions about their performance on the pitch. So damned if they do, and damned if they don't. Yep. I'd rather them put everything out there on the pitch and let there be no questions about their performance on the pitch, and let there be questions about their sportsmanship, than for the pundits to have questions about everything that happens on the pitch. Let them enjoy their 5 minutes of fame, their spike in ratings for talking about the women's national team. Let them enjoy that. But also let these women que se han partido la madre, who have busted their behinds week in and week out on their clubs and on the national level, let them do what they're paid and what they're known to do, and that is to play soccer as they see fit. And if that means rolling over everybody, that's fine. But at least you know that they gave it their 100% from minute 1 to minute 90 plus.
Absolutely. So I happened across this article, and it made me chuckle, which is why I kind of laughed at it for a second. A Florida bar offering free shots every time the U.S. women's national team scored Tuesday night had to stop the promotion during the record-setting 13-0 blowout win over Thailand. Could you imagine being in that bar?
Oh, man.
Everybody was wasted. Like, that's crazy.
I don't think
they probably stopped it after like 6 or 7-0. But still, that's 7 shots. I mean, dear God. Oh, I can't even imagine. And every one of them that was in that bar didn't show up to work the next morning.
I imagine. I'm pretty sure a lot of them couldn't make it back to work from their lunch hour.
They probably all Ubered home, or at least I sure as hell hope they did. Jesus. I mean, I saw it. I was like, holy crap. Like, that's just crazy.
But yeah, that's my thoughts on the women's national team, and I'll live by that mentality.
All right, so we got 15-ish minutes. Phone lines are open, guys. If you have a hot take, an opinion, a cold take, a cold slice, whatever you want to call it, feel free to call in. It's 956-622-5977. We would love to get your phone call in before we call it a night. Otherwise, we might call it a night a little early, and I might go get me some food because I'm getting hungry. I didn't eat dinner before the show because I was kind of like, whatever. I wasn't really that hungry, but I'm hungry now. So, yeah.
Come on, guys. We're giving you the opportunity.
We'll leave them open till 8:50. So they got 3 minutes.
All right.
So what else? What's up with there's been a lot of transfer rumors. Any good ones for Real Madrid?
Well, they just presented Eden Hazard today at the Santiago Bernabeu.
Really good signing for them, to be honest with you.
More than 70,000 people attended that presentation. They also signed Mendy from Olympique Lyonnais as a left back. They signed Luka Jovic, and I believe they also signed one more player. I can't remember out of the top of my head. But looks like Florentino Perez is going all out this transfer window to bolster up this team after that pathetic performance last season in all competitions. And it just goes to share. Here's one of the things, like going back to the topic that we started with. You asked about Real Madrid and whether spending money is really really worth it. Is really worth it. Real Madrid, how much did they spend on Gareth Bale? How much did they spend on Thibaut Courtois? Like, these are players that, yes, Gareth Bale in the beginning brought up, a couple of sparks here and there that were crucial to the team getting some silverware in those seasons. But if you look at his stay overall in Real Madrid, was he really worth the money that Florentino Perez paid for him? Not at all. Was the signing of Thibaut Courtois necessary when you already had Keylor Navas? Not at all. Look at Thibaut Courtois' performances this season. Extremely pathetic. And how much did they pay for him? A lot. And now you have Keylor Navas not happy and Real Madrid wanting to get rid of him. Bale leaving, Marcelo leaving, which I understand that it's time for a new generational change. But the thing about Real Madrid is this is a team that it is a priority, it is a responsibility of them to have most of the best players in the world. So they have to pay this kind of money, especially now that the transfer market has been super inflated these past couple of years. So they have to pay a lot more money to bring in these players. With that price tag comes a lot of responsibility. And we've had players coming in that, granted, weren't worth the money that you paid for them. Whether it's the tactics, they didn't really like or got used to the tactics used by, whether it was Zinedine Zidane or what's his name? Llorente. See, was it Llorente? No, it wasn't Llorente. I'm trying to remember. My mind's really like trying to check out right now. But the thing is like some of these players like really didn't work out with Real Madrid for one reason or another. Solari or Lopetegui. They have to spend this money because it's a priority, but not only the fans, but also the stockholders of this team. And yes, they've been very successful in many years. But they've won Champions League, but have they won the league? They have not.
That's a good point.
Did they really have a roster that could play Copa del Rey, Champions League, and the league? And from what the results have shown, they don't. Even if they spent a lot of money. But like you said, they spent the money in the worst possible way. They spend it incorrectly. They spend it bringing players that this roster did not need.
Yep.
And continued to go on with players that did not fit the Madrid system. Instead of bringing somebody that will fix those issues, they turned a blind eye to those issues and wanted to go over to bring in a player for the marketing and not necessarily what's on the field. But hopefully this season, we can get a better showing out of Real Madrid with the inclusion of Eden Hazard, and we'll see who else Florentino Perez has on his mind to bring. Many people keep on wanting Mbappe. We don't know if that's going to happen.
That would be a very, very, very high transfer figure. I wouldn't put it past Real Madrid to try, but PSG would have to be willing to part with him. Yeah. So,
Phone lines are closed.
yes, they are. To close the show tonight, I found this story as well. Has nothing to do with soccer, but I figure it'll put a smile on everyone's face. There is apparently a beer that is made with roasted bull testicles, and apparently it's rather delicious. A brewery in Colorado back in 2012 created an April Fool's Day prank, advertising a beer via YouTube called the Rocky Mountain Oyster Stout, which of course references the classic Western snack of fried bull testicles. And instead of people on YouTube losing their shit over ew, they all apparently were rather intrigued and wanted to try it. So the owner of the brewery decided, why not? Let's give it a try. And so he's created the beer, and it's apparently really pretty good. They call it, beer nerds call it a nutty brew. Play on words.
Oh,
And it's actually so good that it's become a staple for the brewery. It is made of, it is a stout at 7.2% alcohol by volume, and it includes 3 balls per barrel, BPB, and includes 25 pounds of freshly sliced and roasted bull testicles and sea salt. It is the self-proclaimed ballsiest canned beer in the world and is sold in a 2-pack. That's pretty damn funny. The ingredients that actually go into it is barley, 7 different specialty malts, a hint of sea salt, Styrian Golding hops to create that roasted flavor and luscious mouthfeel, and obviously Rocky Mountain oysters. Apparently, it's a very assertive beer, which is even more funny because it's a bull. Talking about bull. It apparently is similar to an earthy, savory a beer with hints of chocolate with coffee, espresso, and nuts that give it a slightly bitter, roasty, dry finish. Yeah, so I just wanted to share that with you guys since I found it. And I was like, dude, that's pretty cool.
I don't want to
in a
know
really
what you were
weird way.
searching on Google while I was talking about Real Madrid.
I wasn't searching on Google. This actually popped up on my Facebook feed. I think because I follow my best friend who owns a coffee shop and beer and wine bar. And so I am always reading about beers and wines and coffee. And so I guess this popped up as a result of that. But it definitely caught my attention, to say the least. But I think that's going to close up the show. Talking about beer testicles to close the show seems fitting, right?
Seems legit.
Especially after talking about Real Madrid. Seems like a perfect segue, rolling right into the other. So guys, hey, thank you for tuning in. I know it's a weird day and a weird time, and it will be next week as well. But we appreciate you that are able to tune in. Again, next week, our plan is to go ahead and roll on Wednesday, running like 7 to 10-ish, as long as Edson didn't fall asleep on us. And we'll see you guys next week.
All right, guys. Take care. Bye.
Later.